All right, again, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm not sure if everyone is from the East Coast. We might have some from the Midwest or all the way out West, maybe even alumni joining us from other countries. But either way, I want to thank you for joining us. I'm glad that you've taken some of your precious time to come and talk to us today. Today's webinar is focused on financial health. Specifically focused on folks in the middle of their career, mid-career. So the webinar is the second of a three-part series, and all revolving around the topic of financial health. The first webinar on financial health we did a couple months back with the Dean of Faculty here at Gallaudet, Dr. Rashid. And she focused on the fundamentals, the first steps, the basics behind personal finance. From that foundation, we're going to move forward to our new presenter today, our wonderful presenter herself, an alumni of Gallaudet, Stephanie Summers. Stephanie graduated from Gallaudet in 1989, and she's going to focus again on those who are in the middle of their career. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Stephanie Summers to the stage, and so she can take over and start her presentation. Stephanie?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you very much, Darius, for that kind introduction. I'm very excited to be presenting to you this evening on the second part of this financial health series. This topic is really critical and will be critical throughout your entire career, from entry level and actually even as a child through adulthood. It's something that's critical for everyone at every stage of life. If you could start my first slide, please, Darius. Could you click on those two bars and make that slide just a bit bigger? If you're watching, click on the bar on the side and you can make me bigger and the PowerPoint a little bit smaller so that you can see both of us. So I'll be talking about four things tonight. If you can go to the next slide, I'll begin with the first portion. And before I go into detail with this presentation, I do want to mention that we will have time for Q&A at the end. So once I have finished the presentation, please feel free to type your questions in the chat in the Q&A, and I'll go ahead and answer those at the end. All right, next slide, please. So tonight we'll be covering four topics. The first of these is the foundation, then goals, budgeting and planning, and then finally investing for different goals and different time horizons. As far as that foundation and goals piece, I know that Dr. Rashid spoke a little bit about that in the first part of the series, but I just want to reinforce that idea because it is so important. Having that foundation and setting those goals. Next slide. So here again, you'll see the foundation starts at the bottom of the pyramid and it continues up towards the top. There's a lot of information in this one slide, so I'll do my best to expand on the different pieces you're seeing here. That first level, that foundation, is that money in your bank account. It's the checks that you receive, it's your saving, it's your CDs, it's that income that you're earning and putting in your checking and savings account and watching it grow. And as it grows in that checking account, you may be moving it over to savings. Once you have that 3 to 6 month emergency fund, you never know when some crisis will hit and you need to have that. You may have car repairs or job loss, housing maintenance, Maybe you need a new appliance suddenly. Those things are very expensive. So it's important to have that emergency fund there to fund those crises that may come up in life. So that's the foundation piece. Now, the other portion of that foundation is risk insurance. What that means are things like health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance. And oftentimes your employer will provide those. So the things that you can sign up for with HR, and it's just deducted from your paycheck. Now, aside from those employers provided insurance, you have a home and you have a car, so you're going to need home insurance and car insurance as well. Those are important pieces of your foundation. Once you have all of those pieces in place, you have that solid foundation. Once you're at a comfortable space with that foundation, you can move to the next level, which is that retirement savings and investments, buying a home. So once your money has built up to the point where you can make a deposit on a home, or you can start your retirement account, again, that's probably something that your employer can provide and deduct from your paycheck, as well as other plans or other supplemental retirement plans as well. Once you have that retirement piece and your family is growing, now you have children. And so of course you want these children to go to college. So the next piece of that is figuring out how to pay for that college. And we see college prices, tuition prices continuing to raise. And we also have the room and board piece of college as well. Tuition is rising faster than inflation. Room and board is rising faster than inflation. So how are we going to pay for those things? The answer to that is college savings. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation tonight. I'll also speak a little bit more about retirement plans and retirement options. So if you have each of these pieces and you still have money sitting in the bank, the next step is to make investments. And there are many different investment vehicles, investment options. Those are the top two pieces of the pyramid here. And my intention tonight is to show you how you can build that healthy foundation, but you have to have that solid foundation at the bottom of the pyramid first. That's the key. Build that healthy, solid foundation, and then you can start the investments and the top portion of the pyramid. If you flip that, you're going to end up with a less solid foundation and your plans could fall through. Now speaking a little bit about goals. How smart are your goals? See that word here, smart? It's actually an acronym. So what that represents is the S being specific. So when you set your goals, be specific. Don't say, I want to save money. What are you saving money for? So be specific with your goals. Those goals should also be measurable. So once you've figured out what you're saving money for, what is the time frame that you're saving that money? So you may say something like, okay, I want to save $1 million in the next 10 years. Now, is that realistic? Maybe not. But if you say, I want to save $1 million in 30 years, that time frame might be more realistic. That's something you can actually attain. And moving on to that next piece, that attainable, you have to make sure that these specific goals that you're setting are actually attainable, that you can reach these. If you're setting a goal that's unattainable, there's no way that you can make that happen. You have to look at what your desires are, what you want to see for yourself in the future, and build a list of the things that you're looking for, the things that you want, things that you can accomplish, and then you'll figure out ways to accomplish them. The R in SMART stands for relevant. So these goals that you're setting should be a relevant timeline. Maybe you want to buy a car in the next 5 years. So you're saving for that 5-year timeline and you want to make a down payment on a car. Maybe you want to buy a second home. These are goals that are relevant to your situation. There has to be something that you're saving for. You don't want to just build your money. You have to have a reason and a time frame for doing this. And the last piece of that SMART goal is timeliness. You have to have a timeline that you're reaching for when you're trying to attain these goals. And another important piece is writing this down, writing all of these goals down, typing them into your smartphone, something that you can see every day. When it's something that you can see every day and it's in front of you, you'll make it happen. If you're just speaking about it with your spouse or your partner, but you're not seeing it in front of you, it's less likely to happen. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is these goals are part of your life's achievement. So what is it that you are looking to achieve? You have your life goals, your career goals, your financial goals. Maybe you want to be promoted in a job, move up the ladder. If you write that down, you want to maybe go to school, become a doctor, write down those goals. The more you write these down and make these visual, the more likely they are to happen. And the same thing is true for financial goals. Writing them down makes them that much more likely to become attainable. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about money. You have your credit cards, your house spending, your school spending, leisure activities. Do you have enough to go around? So this is where the budgeting and expenses piece comes in. So if you have debt that you are still needing to pay off, you know, and I always advise people, pay off your debt as soon as you can. Don't carry that debt. You'll feel freer, you'll have extra money to invest, you'll be able to do something with that money. And as far as the car, like I mentioned before, maybe your goal is to buy a new car, make a down payment on a new car in the next 5, 7, 8, or saving $5, 7, 8, $10,000 to deposit on a new car. Or maybe your goal is to buy a house. Often people will say you need to put down 20% down payment on a house so that you can avoid the hazard insurance. Sometimes that's not possible. You want to buy the house now. You don't have years and years to save the 20%, but you still need to put down as much as you can, depending on your loan amount and what percentage. And then looking at the college planning piece and the saving for college. If you have children, this is something you're thinking about, how to afford college. And you can start putting away that money now. It's college expensive, tuition and room and board gets expensive, plus all of the other fees that one encounters in college. And it can be anywhere from $5,000 or $6,000 to $60,000, $70,000 a year, depending on which school you're going to. You see the image here with golfing. You know, a lot of people take up golfing during retirement or in their later years. It's a nice leisurely activity. You might work 4 days a week, have Fridays off, and go hit the course. So you want to have money to be able to do those things. Pay for the club fees, pay for the membership fees. So these all take time to plan so that all of these goals are attainable for you. Next slide. Now the budgeting and planning piece of this. This is how you put those goals into place. Those goals that you've set, that foundation that you have, you set this financial plan for yourself via a budget. And so an important piece of this is your income. Go ahead and click income, please.
You can see under income, we've got paychecks, rental income, any government benefits you might receive, like Social Security, interest income from any bank accounts you may have, and then investment income. All of these are different types of income. So as you're figuring out the next step is to figure out your expenses. So go ahead and click the next slide. There we go. And expenses kind of break down into two different categories. Fixed expenses are things that are your regular monthly expenses, your mortgage, your rent, your utilities, whatever your bills are, your phone, maybe your water bill, those things that come on a regular basis that you got to pay every month. Discretionary expenses are things that include things like food, vacation, clothing, gifts, even self-care, like getting your hair done. So take a look at what you're spending. Do you have a surplus or do you have a deficit? If you have a surplus, that extra money that you've got left over at the end of every month, that's the goal, right? If you have a deficit, then maybe you need to get another job because you need to increase the income portion of this equation, or you need to go through and start making some cuts in your expenses. So you need to take a close look at your income and your expenses and take control over that flow. There's a variety of ways you can do that. You can do that by using an Excel spreadsheet. Others have apps on their phones that they download. There's one very popular app called Mint that a lot of people use, but there's a lot of different budgeting apps out there that you can take advantage of. Next slide, please. Go ahead. You can go ahead and click through. There we go. Thank you. So investing was another piece. So is investing speculating or is it savings? Does it feel like a gamble or does it feel like a way to really grow your income, your money? And to be honest, the answer is it's a combination of both. It is a gamble, but it is also a good way to save money. You want to carefully plan your investing and manage your money for the goals that you've set so that you can grow your money to achieve those goals, whether that be for a retirement fund or investing to save as a way for college tuition, or you want to buy a new home down the road and you need a down payment on that house. Let's say your goal is in 5 years, you want to buy a house, then you can do some investing to grow your money to make a greater down payment. So there are risks involved in any kind of investment. If you don't invest money, that also is a risk. So either way, you're taking a risk. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'm going to talk about risk tolerance. We introduced that idea that risk is there. So there are trade-offs in any investment that you make, whether or not the market goes up or the market goes down, all depends on your comfort level with the amount of risk you're willing to take. Also, you need to think about your timeline. Where are you in your life? If you're on the slide here, you can see in the red area, that's higher risk kinds of things. Now, you may get a greater return. So you may see a way to reward yourself. You can see your money grow. As you move closer to the blue end of the arrow, it's less risk, but with less risk comes less return. So you have to decide where you feel comfortable. Where are you? If you're still in the working world and you're planning on working for another 20 years, and then retirement nowadays is a good 20 to 30 years in and of itself, you've got another 50 years of life left. So you need to make your money work for you and not run out of money. With investing, you're going to take a risk and you will see a return in your money growing, but you have to be able to navigate and deal with periodic losses. Like on the previous slide, the concept of speculation or a gamble with your money, it's true. When you are investing money, you are taking a risk there, and it is a certain gamble. So you can monitor your goals. You put your goals in place. You monitor your investments to reach your goals, and that's a good way of doing it. Next slide. So when you're thinking about retirement, you're going to need to build up quite a nest egg. So it's important that if you are new to the workforce, start now. The sooner you start saving money, the longer you have to invest, the longer your investment will grow. If you wait until 10 or 20 years down the road, it's going to be harder to play catch up to be able to get that money that you need for retirement. And then it becomes more expensive. So even if you just start with a small amount of money, like $3,000 a year at a 6% rate of return or growth rate. Now, this doesn't show whether or not, as you've gone along the line, if you've lost any money. This is just a very basic graph to give you an idea of how that money would grow over a period of time. So if you started at the age of 20, saving $3,000 at a 6% rate of return, and you got that without any change, you don't withdraw any money, it's 6% steady for all of these years, you can grow that money over the years to $679,000. Now, that's if you started 20 years old. If you waited until you were 35, just 15 years, and you do the same rate of return, the same amount of investment, at the end, at the same period where you could have had 679,000, you have 254,000. So if you are thinking you want to retire at age 65, that's the age here that we picked on this. Maybe you waited until you were 45 years old and you start investing that same amount, the $3,000 a year for the rest of those 20 years at the 6%, you only have $120,000. Okay, next slide, please. So when we talk about college savings, we recently talked about retirement, but now I want to focus on college savings. This is one of the most critical investments that parents can make. A lot of people are very focused on retirement and college. Those are the two big places where people are saving money. There are others, but these are the key ones. These are the ones that most people are thinking about when they're thinking about investment. So for college savings, there's two different kinds of savings plans. There's a college savings plan that a lot of people are aware of. It's called a 529 plan. So a 529 plan is an account that you can set up. It's an individual account that parents can set up, grandparents can set up, aunts and uncles, anyone could set it up for their family members. And then make investments into the 529. And like all investments, you will see a growth based on market rates. And so there's risk involved in a 529 plan, just like any others. But the money that's invested in the 529 plan can be used for anything college related. Tuition, room and board, fees, any of those expenses can be withdrawn from this account to pay for. Recently, there has been a law passed that also includes being able to use 529 plans for paying for private schools in the K through 12 space. And you can, if you already have a loan for college, you can take that money out of your 529 plan to pay up to $10,000 off on your loan. So those are recent changes to 529 plans. Now, there's another kind of plan that's called a prepaid tuition plans. Prepaid tuition plans are more limited. They are only related to the state colleges in which the state where you live. So there's a specific amount of money that tuition costs today. Let's say you invest $25,000 into this prepaid plan. And then later your child goes to a school, a college in the state where you live. You've got that money that is available, that limited amount of money that's now available for you to have to pay for the tuition. If your child says, you know what, I don't want to go to a state school. I want to go out of state. I want to go to a school in a different state. Well, now that money is only available for state plans. So there are more strings tied to a prepaid tuition plan. Whereas a 529 plan, you've got more flexibility. Imagine you have 4 children. Maybe your oldest doesn't go to college. So the money that you've got in your 529 plan can then kind of roll over to your second child. If they go to a 4-year school, even if they go on to graduate school to get their PhD, you can continue using the money in that plan. And anything that's left over can then go to your third child or your fourth child. So keep in mind, when you're thinking about investment, the two big areas of investment, the two major places where you need to invest your money, you need to be focused on retirement and you need to be focused on saving for college. If you've got those things set up and you are making those regular monthly investments or however often you put it in, then you can start to look at investments outside of those two major key points where you need to be saving money. Okay. So we've talked about planning and investing for the future. But what about today? You need to do something about it now. So planning is bringing the future into the present so you can now do something about it, right? When you think about the money that you want to save and enjoying retirement, you need to think, you're thinking about your future, but to do that, you need to kind of bring that into the present in order to make that happen in the future. You see that picture? I'm picturing a dock where you're just enjoying your time on a lake, going out for a swim, stress-free. No, you've planned well, you're retired, you don't have those daily work stresses. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I think now I'm done with the slide deck, so I'm open for questions. Does anyone have any questions they want to put in the chat?
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Stephanie. So now I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions in the Q&A. So please go ahead and click on the Q&A and enter your questions, and we will go ahead and share those. I see one question that was shared in the chat, and I know that you've kind of answered this already, but we can repeat some of these. This is a common question. This is in the senior community. This is a common question that comes up in preparing for retirement. Many of the seniors who are ready to retire don't necessarily have cash in the bank. So what advice do you have for those who have not yet retired but are getting close? How can they prepare their savings as they approach that retirement age? How can they increase their cash in the bank?
It's a good question. And really it depends on what is your lifestyle. Okay, so you have to think about your income. Sometimes when you retire, those retirement benefits don't kick in right away. So you got to think about those first few months. You got to have cash available to be able to get by for the first couple months until your income starts to kick in, whether or not that's from a pension or from Social Security or from other sources. That income takes a while to kick in. So having at least a couple months available to you that's built into your savings account is a critical piece, because if you don't, then you're going to have a real struggle those first couple months. How are you going to be able to pay for your basic needs while you're waiting for that Social Security check to come?
Thank you very much for that, Stephanie. Now, in general, what can one do to protect themselves, or what is the best safeguard as far as an amount of cash to have in savings when you're ready to get to that point where you're retired? What's a good rule of thumb as far as the amount of cash you should have on hand?
So there's no magic number. Like I mentioned before, it really depends on your lifestyle. So, do you like to travel a lot? You may need more cash. But if you're someone who stays at home, maybe travels once a year or has a plan for a year or so, then you can kind of take time to save that up. So it depends. There's no magic number. There's no specific amount that I can tell you. that you need to have X amount of dollars in the bank. It really depends on your lifestyle, and everyone is different. For people who are still working, I recommend that you have a minimum of 3 months in your savings account. 3 to 6 months is the recommended range. So if you're earning $50,000 a year, 6 months worth of income is $25,000, right? So some people have that in the account, and that makes them feel really safe. Others say, you know what, 25,000 is just too much. So I'll do 3 months. At 50,000 a year, that's 12,500. That gives me a cushion, but it's not so much of a cushion. It depends on what your needs are. You have to think about, what if something comes up? Those things could be like car repairs, appliance repairs, loss of income. If something happens, you lose your job, you got to think, okay, how long will it take me to find a new job? Well, if it takes 3 months and you've got 3 months in the bank, you've got enough money to cover your basic needs. So that's the thinking you need to be doing if you're still in the working world.
Great. So the third question we have, this is investment related, specifically bonds. What makes bonds go up or down as an investment? What factors influence bonds?
So bonds are considered a fixed income investment. So they typically have kind of an opposite reaction to the stock market. If you see the stock market going up, bonds typically will be going down. So if the bond market's going up, then stocks are going down. That's normally how it works. But recently, the way the market's been, it's been a different reaction than what is typical. And that's a different discussion for a different time, and we could go into those details, but generally, bonds are considered a fixed income investment.
Thank you for that. So there are a few good questions I do want to make sure we have time to ask. One of our participants is asking, how do I know if I need an accountant or a financial advisor to help me achieve some of these great suggestions that you've made tonight? I don't have any experience with managing finances. So how do I know that I need that professional help?
Oh, that's a good question. I think everyone should have a few things: a financial planner, a CPA, an attorney, and all of those professionals address different needs in your life. How do you know if you need one? If you've got some money and you're at the point where you're ready to invest, I think it's good for you to start doing some research online to look at different deaf people in the profession. There are deaf CPAs, deaf financial advisors, deaf attorneys who can help you with figuring out how best to invest. You can inquire with them and figure out which one of these professionals would be the best one to help you in your situation.
All right. Here's another good question. So Stephanie, in your field, what do you see as common issues that come up in your field in financial services, specifically with the deaf community? When it comes to things like financial planning or saving, what are some common issues that you have seen?
That's a good question. So, well, this really isn't just a deaf thing. This is a common amongst all people, regardless of hearing status, that people wait too long to start saving for retirement. Don't wait until you're close to retirement to start saving for retirement. Like I said, the earlier you start, the better plan you have in place that gets your foundation to be rock solid. That is a critical piece when saving for retirement. I mentioned earlier that you set those goals, and once you have those goals in mind, the way that you can achieve the goals is, well, let me give you an example. If you say, I like to travel twice a year, and every time I take a trip, it's going to cost me, well, $10,000 a trip, so $20,000 a year in travel. That's fine, but you got to look at your income, what you're investing in retirement, what you're investing in other investments, and say, okay, if I want to spend $20,000 a year in retirement, in traveling, do I have enough money? I don't want to see people wait until you're close to retirement to start saving, because that will lead to a very disappointing result. You're going to have to work longer. There's a lot of different factors that you have to consider. So bottom line, don't wait.
All right. And another question here. What are some different kinds of retirement accounts out there? I know there are more than just one. And are there different accounts for different reasons? Can you talk a little bit about retirement accounts?
Oh yeah, very good question. So you've probably heard of 401ks, and a 401k is typically offered by a private company. The TSP, or thrift savings account, or I'm sorry, thrift savings plan, TSP, is the retirement plan offered by the federal government. People who work in hospitals or schools or nonprofit organizations have a few different options. You may have heard the term 403B, 457. And the reason for those different numbers is those are part of the IRS code. So the IRS knows what kind of plan you're in and where that's coming from. You may have heard of things like Roth IRAs. That's where the investment's made with after-tax funds. If you are investing like with the other plans I mentioned, TSP and 401k, those are typically what are referred to as traditional IRAs. And over the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, they have started to include Roth options in those plans as well.
Great. So we have a fourth question here. Someone's asking, if I want to learn how to trade futures or options myself, where should I go to take classes and learn how to do that?
So where can you take classes to learn more? Well, I'm sure you can find them online if you do a search. There's all kinds of different investment options that you could set up. You could open investment accounts online. A few of them will even start with just a very small amount of money. And you can do that, invest a small amount and kind of play with it, and you can learn. Now, investing is trial and error. As the market goes up and the market goes down, you can see, oh, okay, that was a bad investment, lost a little bit of money there, or no, I gained some money here. So that's one option. There's a lot of books out there that you can read on this topic. So I'm not aware of any specific courses that you can take, but I'm sure that there are probably community colleges that offer programs on financial planning and so forth. So they're out there. You just have to do a little research and look for them.
Yeah, you just have to look for them. That's that self-advocacy piece, I guess. So we've got 2 more questions regarding investing. So this is, I'm personally curious on your thoughts on this. They said, what's your perspective on, I'm sorry, let me make sure I'm reading the question correctly here. What's your perspective on cryptocurrency? How should we as deaf people approach cryptocurrency as an investment opportunity? What are your thoughts on that? And I'm curious to hear the answer too.
Okay, so crypto is a not federally regulated currency. So people are buying them in various online websites, so investing their money there. Now, first, you have to understand what cryptocurrency is. And it is a completely digital currency. There's no actual money backing it up. There's no cash, there's no coins, there's no actual currency. It's completely digital. In my field, we don't deal in cryptocurrency. So if you have curiosities about that, go online. Coinbase is one place. Robinhood is another site. I'm trying to remember what's another popular cryptocurrency site. I can't remember one off the top of my head. But if you Google it, you're going to find lots of different sites out there and lots of different places where they offer and sell cryptocurrencies. This is high risk, very, very risky. And one key thing to remember if you're interested in investing in crypto, when you buy cryptocurrency, you have to remember your password or the key that you create when you purchase the cryptocurrency. If you lose that key, all the money that you've invested, it's out there somewhere in the ether, but you can't access it. So you gotta have your password. You gotta have that key to access this investment you made and to maintain your cryptocurrency account. So that's something really important to remember.
Great, thank you. I remember reading an article recently about a guy who had invested in Bitcoin. It's a form of cryptocurrency back when Bitcoin first started. And he had kind of ignored it, and it just grew and grew and grew to the point where it was worth several $millions, but he forgot where his token was, his key. And so he wasn't able to access any of that investment.
That's right.
He's still locked out of it. So it's very sad.
That's right.
Now, another question about retirement. This person's asking, is it a good idea to keep a Roth account with a few $1,000s in it, or should this person move that money to a more modern, quote unquote, modern account? Not sure what the person means by modern, but point is that a Roth account with a few $1,000s, is that a good place to keep that money, or should they move that to some other vehicle?
So I'm not 100% sure I understand the question, but if you have money in a Roth account, that is a retirement account. So if you move it to a different type of account, there are restrictions on being able to do that. That's not effective. It's got to be registered as the same type of account. So if you're moving money out of a Roth account, you got to move it to another Roth account, unless you withdraw the money. Now, if you withdraw the money and then invest it in a different account, you could do that. But as you withdraw the money, there are implications there. It becomes taxable. So the Roth account is not taxable. So it depends on how old you are and how old you take the money, how old you are when you want to take the money out of the account. So there are tax consequences there. So it's important for you to understand that.
Great. Looking at the time, it's now 7:51 Eastern, so we will be wrapping up soon. We have a few more questions that we'll go through, and then we'll end at 8. Let's see if you have an answer to this question. Person is asking, what kind of retirement accounts are there available, or retirement plans available for Canadian citizens?
Oh, unfortunately, I don't know anything about investments outside the US, so that's not my area.
Not a problem. Okay, we have another question that says, after the age of 70 and a half, I am required to use an RMD, or withdraw my entire needs for the year, according to the IRS. Is that the same as an annuity? And is an annuity the safest investment?
Okay, so if you are 70 and a half years old or older, a new law passed that actually moved this RMD age up to 72. But you are required to take minimum distributions. RMD means required minimum distribution. So an annuity is if you have a retirement account in your annuity, then you can take your RMD as well. So the second part of your question, Darius, what was that again? I missed that. Could you repeat the second part of his question?
Sure. So I'll just quote the question. It says, at age 70.5, I'm required to withdraw an RMD every year, according to the IRS. Is this the same thing as an annuity? And is an annuity the safest investment, or which annuity might be the safest investment?
So annuity is a product that has some extra protections. It's an insurance product where there are different protections built in. It's different than an investment. An annuity can have a retirement account as a component of it. Now, which is safer? I don't know, without really taking a close look at the different products and what we're talking about in an individual situation. It's hard for me to give general advice there.
Thank you. We do have one more question. This question is, what are your thoughts on the different websites and apps that will invest for someone? So if I just put in the money, maybe $200, these websites or apps will invest that money for me without my input. What is your advice on that, or your thoughts on that? Is it better to go through a financial advisor and pick those specific companies or organizations that I want to invest in, or let the app do it for me, or let those platforms do it for me? Just to give an example, Acorn is one of the platforms that does this.
Sure, yeah. So Acorn is, from my understanding of that, that's where you give them money and then they invest the money you've given them. However, you should be asking yourself, what are you looking for? What are your goals? Again, going back to that very first step, establishing goals, there should be some questions there to ask you, what are your goals? And then you could let them do the investment for you, but they also have limited pools of investment options to choose from. So it's not that you can just invest your money anywhere. It's just the pool of companies where Acorn has connections. So they should be asking you where you want to invest your money. So you can do that if that's where you're comfortable, to let this app or other website take care of it for you without much discussion or monitoring. This is really an individual's preference.
Okay, so it seems that we are at the end of our questions. I'll just wait maybe a minute or two if anyone has any last questions before we wrap up. But until then, I do believe we are done for the evening. Thank you so much for your time, Stephanie, and for your services. This has been a very enjoyable presentation.
Oh, thank you.
And we'll make sure to share this recording with the alumni who weren't able to make it tonight.
I'm happy to be able to give back to the Alumni Association at our home, Gallaudet University. It makes me feel good to be able to do that. Whether or not it's remote or in person, this has been really nice, and I'm glad to have been part of it. Thank you.
Thank you again, Stephanie. And thank you to all who've attended tonight's presentation. Thank you for spending your evening with us. Take care, everyone, and have a great evening.
Bye, everyone. Take care.